Welcome back, everybody. This is the thejonnymar, and I'm continuing with Final Fantasy II. So, my last episode, we started to progress through the final area of the Soul of Rebirth Dungeon, and I engaged in what I call the Great Grind Part 2. So, I got all of my characters above 2,000 HP, and I also continued to build up my spells and abilities with my weapons. And this is to allow me to beat all of the mini-bosses between this point and the end of the dungeon, as well as the final boss. Now we are pretty much there. We only have 7-ish floors to go. The problem is that many of those floors are going to be mazy, and that is because we have to take particular routes to get to the treasure chests that have the ultimate weapons for our party members. And so, of course, because this is a complete walkthrough, I will be showing all of those routes to get those weapons, because they're actually pretty useful. They not only increase your attack stat, but they also increase many of your key statistics for your characters to maximum level. So they'll increase things like strength, or spirit, or intelligence, etc. to 99 when you equip them. So you'll notice that the layout is very similar to Pandemonium when we were in the main game. And basically what they did is they used essentially the same types of layout, they just kind of flipped it. Usually superimposed it in the opposite direction, and that is essentially what this dungeon looks like if you look at the maps as a whole. So our first super weapon is the Wyvern Lance, and we have to take on a black dragon, which of course is easily slain by the mini spell. But should mini miss, we will of course buff our party members to be able to take it out very quickly with physical attacks. And as you might expect, the Wyvern Lance is the ultimate weapon for Rickard. So we will equip that on Rickard, and you'll notice that he will get a pretty significant boost to his attack, and he will also get a boost to his strength stat as well. So moving on from this first chest, we're going to go to another chest and take on another mini-boss. We have to head to the north here, go through some hidden passages, and head into the wall. And we'll get our first palette swap of a previous mini-boss after obtaining the Wild Rose. So now we're taking on Lucifer, a palette swap of the Astaroth, or whatever it was named in the main game. And it is susceptible to the teleport spell. And you're probably going to want to use it because it likes to regain its HP by hitting you with physical attacks. Now many of these bosses, like in the main game, are weak to either mini or toad or teleport. I'm only going to be using it on the first two. And that is not because I don't think they're legitimate strategies. I do, because they're in the game and they work, so why wouldn't I use them? And here's the Wild Rose. It is the ultimate sword for Scott. So equip it, he gets a boost in attack power, and he also gets a boost in his other stats as well. But, yeah, the reason I'm not going to be using the spells on the other two mini-bosses, or the last two I'm going to face, is because when I've tried it in my practice runs, they didn't work. So it's possible that they are susceptible to either mini or teleport, but at this point, I don't know which ones to use, so I'm just going to power through it. And the way I'm going to do that is by using physical attacks and Ultima. Because at this point I have Ultima built up pretty high, and it's going to do a lot of damage when single targeted. So our second mini-boss is a palette swap of Tiamat, or Tiamat, and that is this guy. Very intimidating looking Yamatano Orochi. Probably butchered that name really badly, so I apologize. But he is susceptible to mini, or she is. And we get a Flare Tome. Well, that's worth 40,000 gold if you want to use it. More importantly, we get the Stardust Rod, the ultimate staff for Minmu. So again, by equipping that, you not only increase his attack power, but you also increase his spirit as well to maximum level. So that's nice. because that'll make his magic spells, his white magic, much more powerful. Next, we're going to head all the way to the left and go through this door, and then we'll head all the way to the back of the room. Will take us to our 3rd/4, if you count the black dragon mini boss. We'll get a ribbon, and we'll take on the steel giant, palette swap of the iron giant. So as you might expect, very strong physical attacker, but it does not have a lot of HP. All of the mini bosses have under 10,000 HP. They're usually in the 6,000 to 8,000 range. So again, you can usually take them out even when you're not using teleport or mini. If you use one Ultima, maybe 2, and some physical attacks, as you'll notice, you can kill them pretty quickly. So we get some Genji gloves. That's pretty nice. Yeah, that mini boss can actually drop some pretty good stuff. He drops Genji equipment, and he can also randomly drop the Excalibur. So that is something to consider. Now, I don't have anyone specializing in swords besides Scott, but if you do get one, you can throw that on Scott and use it to dual wield if you want his particular sword skills. So the last of the mini bosses is through the second from left door. It is a palette swap of the Beelzebub enemy, and I believe it's called the Beelzebub Soul. And this will give us the bracers, the ultimate weapon for Joseph. So again, not sure. He's probably susceptible to teleport or mini, but we're just going to blast him with ultimate and physical attacks. And that'll be it. The bracers are actually not a weapon, because Joseph, of course, focuses on unarmed attacks. So it is actually a gauntlet you can put on him. And again, it increases his attacks significantly as well as his strength. So once we're done with this guy, that'll be it. We just have a few more floors to go, a couple more items to pick up, and then we will get to the final encounter with the final boss of the Soul of Rebirth Shrine. Now, in between episodes, in addition to doing the Great Grind Part 2, which took about another half hour to 45 minutes, I also did some trial runs through the Arcane Labyrinth, which is the special dungeons that were added to the PSP and iOS versions of this game. And man, are they tedious. So the whole structure of them, kind of what you have to do, you have to use keywords, and then you get keywords sometimes from some of the dungeons. They're sort of randomly generated. It's sort of a pseudo-random generation based on the keywords you use. There's 3 dungeons you have to go through. The first one is 4 floors, the second one is 7 floors, and the third one is 10 floors. And then you have to go and fight a boss. And each one has a mini-boss in as well. And the floors themselves have really high hit rates for enemy encounters. They are just tedious as heck. So I am not interested in doing that at all, because all you get out of them is each time you go through all of that nonsense, you'll get either an elixir, one special weapon for your party members, or if you use certain keywords, you can actually take on a secret super boss, and you can get one of 2 special new spells that were added to the game. And both of them are not that great in my opinion. One's the Destroy spell, which just kills everything except the caster. And the other one is a life spell, basically, that heals your party, but also weakens the person who casts it. And you have to keep going through and redoing the whole thing over and over if you want to re-get the items. And the super bosses are really, really powerful. So I would have to grind a ton to stand a chance against the super boss at the end if I wanted to do it. And I just don't have interest in doing that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to post a link in the description of this video for those of you who are interested in doing that. I'll post a link to a FAQ / kind of a site that talks a little bit about the structure of the dungeons and some kind of exploits you can use to try to decrease the encounter rate, strategies for beating the bosses, etc. Maybe I'll come back to it in the future at some point, but probably not. It's kind of like what was called, I think, the Labyrinth of Time or something like that in Final Fantasy 1 for PSP. I didn't do that as well because, again, it was similar. It's a very tedious thing to get to one kind of super boss encounter. So here we are. We're finally at the end of the game. We're finally at the Soul of Rebirth final dungeon. I have re-equipped my party members. I've healed everybody up. You'll notice that Rickard now is dual-wielding his lances to maximize his physical attack power. And we're going to get an extended cutscene with the final boss here before we actually take it on. But for those of you, again, who are interested in doing the Arcane Labyrinth, I will post that link and you can check out that site through the wiki. And that should give you some idea of what you can expect to face. But for us, this is going to be it. So once I beat this final boss, I will be done. I'm considering this series basically over. Again, maybe I'll come back and do the Arcane Labyrinth at some point once I finish other Final Fantasies and maybe have an itch to come back to this game. But for now, I'm going to consider it over once we finish off this incarnation of the Emperor. So the Emperor looks a little bit different, right? Not quite as intimidating looking or evil looking. And that's because he claims that he is the light version. So he's claiming that the Emperor has two halves, the light half and a dark half. And it was the dark half that's been causing all the chaos to our world. The light half here has just been misunderstood. And basically, all he wants to ensure that our party here, these four people, kind of live in peace and harmony for the rest of all time, for eternity, is to apologize, essentially, and accept his apology. Which doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But unlike early Final Fantasy games, Dragon Quest games, Dragon Warrior games, for example, in the NES, you don't really have a choice here. I'm reminded of the end of Dragon Warrior, as it was called in the US 1. When you take on the final boss there, he gives you a choice, but if you choose to accept kind of his terms, the game just kind of ends. And I think the idea behind that is that he kills you, or he takes advantage of you, you know, he betrays you, essentially. And I get the same sense from this as well. And our party members, they don't buy it. Basically, they're like, we don't really believe you when you say that. You've done horrible things, you've committed terrible atrocities, we're not willing to forgive you. Instead, if we kill you, right, then that will be vengeance. But it's not enough to just go into battle here. I mean, our party members are pretty clear here that they don't really believe him and that they're not going to forgive him. But we have to have an extended cutscene to, I guess, convince them completely. So now we're going to see behind the Emperor, we're going to see people that are significant from our party members' lives coming in and saying, basically, don't trust him. No, we don't have to forgive you. And I don't even get a choice to forgive you. So there are the lady and child from Diced. There is Nellie, Joseph's daughter. We see Gordon, Scott's brother. And then, of course, Minwu's significant person is Hilda. And they're talking about the fact that, seemingly at this point, while we're facing the Light Emperor here, my other party is taking on the Dark Emperor. And you'll notice that they're using some stuff and have stats much different than how I built my characters. So, for example, Guy has 4,500 hit points. Maria has 670 MP. So the people who built their party this way, they did quite a bit of grinding. Although I'm not sure it's necessarily much more effective. You'll notice their attack power isn't that great. And that's because apparently they don't have Berserk. Level 16 Cure. Heals less than 200 per party member. But what's nice about this is you get to see some maxed out magic kind of the spell effects. So you got to see a maxed out Holy, and now you'll get to see a maxed out Ultima and what that looks like. Pretty cool effect. It only does 800 damage. So while they are fighting the Dark Emperor, we are going to take on the Light Emperor. And I've had a few people ask about whether or not that kid who is named Kain and wants to become a Dragoon, is that related in any way to Final Fantasy IV, Kain in that game? And the answer is probably not. I mean, these universes are not connected. So the chances that that is actually Kain are pretty much nothing, because there is no direct connection between the Final Fantasy II and IV universe. So my guess is it's supposed to just be kind of one of these retconned, added in kind of little Easter egg things where they try to connect all the different Final Fantasies using significant character names. Like they did with Final Fantasy I, they added in Sid to the remakes, even though he wasn't in the original. And the kid in the original Final Fantasy II was not named, and he certainly wasn't named Kain. So again, I think it's just the developers kind of alluding to or trying to set up some somewhat connections that aren't really that significant. So the Emperor has about 25,000 hit points, so about 10,000 more than the Dark version. Other than that, pretty similar. Your strategy is going to be to buff your physical attackers and then also use Ultima. So Ultima should do around 5,000 plus-ish damage, and then your physical attackers, once they're buffed, so we get to see Holy there, pretty cool effect. Once they're buffed with Berserk and Haste, they'll be doing a couple thousand points of damage each. This fight should take around 4 to 5 rounds to complete. So the Emperor here reminds me a little bit of how Kefka looks in Final Fantasy VI in his final form. Not the same for the most part, but they have a similar effect with the angel wings. And it kind of shows, you know, Final Fantasy games like to use almost an angel-like visage or visage for their final kind of boss encounters. Because of course in Final Fantasy VII as well, for those of you that have played that game, that comes back as well with the final boss in that game. We are almost done here. We have done quite a bit of damage. We should maybe be able to take him out this round, but it might take one more round. Let's see here. Oh yeah, we got him. You can tell because the game kind of paused there, and Joseph didn't get all the way back to the party. And that's the thing about the PSP. It has some lag with loading certain screens. So you may have noticed throughout the series, there were certain points where the game seemed to freeze a little bit. And that was because the PSP was lagging a bit trying to load the next area. But we did it! We beat the Emperor! Again! It says, we've changed nothing! Humans are violent and bloody! And then he disappears. Bye, Emperor. We never have to face you ever again. And at the same time, our other party is apparently beating the Dark version. So I'm not sure if that's what he means by this, not once but twice. Maybe he's alluding to the other party beating the Light version and then this group beating the Dark version. But you do remember we beat a previous incarnation of the Emperor in the Cyclones, so maybe he's alluding to that as well. I'm not sure. But then we get the credits again. So we get this final scene in Finn. It's exactly the same, except they have added in our 4 party members from the Soul of Rebirth. And so they're going to give us a little bit of different dialogue during this interaction. And then the game goes into the credits, and the credits are, again, exactly the same as the main game. So I'll show you how this differs, but I'm not going to put the credits again. If you want to see the credits, you can rewatch the final episode of the main game I did. So that's it, viewers. We are finally done with Final Fantasy II. We have finally ended the Emperor's reign, his dark and his light form, and we have brought peace, hopefully, right, back to the world. And that is the end of this series. So I really hope you've enjoyed it. The feedback in general has been very positive, and so I do appreciate that. Thank you to everyone who supported me in this series, who's watched all the episodes, or even those of you that have only watched a few of the episodes. I do appreciate it. And where I'm going from here is I will continue with the series. So next up is Final Fantasy III, not Final Fantasy VI on the SNES. So it'll be the real Final Fantasy III, and I'll be playing the PSP version. But that isn't going to be coming anytime soon. I'll get to that eventually, probably this fall sometime. Maybe in the spring is when I'll start it. We'll see. I need some free time in order to do that. So as always, viewers, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the series, and I will see you next time as we continue onward with the Final Fantasy franchise with Final Fantasy III. So long, and thanks for watching.